Kate Mila-Falcher. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. It's time for our Saturday book, and we are returning to make our way through the Invisible College. This is video number 5. 1 through 4 are on the last couple of weeks, and this is an older book written in the 70s, 1975, I think. I should know this. Yes, 1975. Reprinted in 2014 and with a foreword by Jacques Vallee that explains why he reprinted it. He felt that there weren't enough changes. I think there's been a change in attitude. Going through this book and noticing his remarks about how the public receives stories of UFOs. The government may not have changed much, military not. But it's less socially unacceptable to talk about, I think. Maybe it's just the people I hang out with. I don't know. Anyway, The Invisible College by Jacques Vallee. What a group of scientists has discovered about UFO influence on the human race. And we're on video 5. And this is actually in the middle of a chapter. This part is called The Angel of Peace. So we were talking about Fatima and the Marian apparition at Fatima, and the fact that events really began 2 years before the apparition of the lady. April of 1915, Lucia, 8 years old, was saying the rosary and saw a transparent white cloud take human form. This happened 2 more times in 1915. In 1916, the angel visited her 3 times. She called this the angel. The first was the spring of 1916. Lucia and her 2 cousins were sheltering, hang on a second, in the cave from the rain, and the rain stopped, but then a powerful wind came and a white light. And these phenomena are often experienced when there's a UFO apparition. The light glided across the treetops, and in the light was a beautiful youth who told them, "I am the angel of peace." Now, this is not the final apparitions of Fatima that are so familiar and famous. This is 2 years before. "I am the angel of peace." He taught them prayer, who knows, and left. The children repeated the prayer and until they collapsed in exhaustion. The second apparition of the angel of peace was midsummer of 1916, when suddenly the angel appeared to them again. The incident took place on a hot day in midsummer. The angel appeared suddenly and said, "What are you doing? Pray. Pray a great deal. Offer prayers and sacrifices continually." And Lucia, remember she's 8, says, "How do we offer sacrifices?" "Make a sacrifice of everything that you possibly can. Above all, accept and bear with submission the suffering the Lord shall send you." The children were left paralyzed. It was only towards the evening they regained their senses and began to play again. In this case, as in the previous one, the witnesses did not want to discuss the matter even amongst themselves. They're just pretending it didn't happen. The experience had been so intimate and so manifestly sacred that none of them ever thinks of revealing it or even the smallest part of it to anybody else. It's obviously a favor to be kept for themselves. Or of that, they are absolutely and instinctively persuaded. The next day, they still could not explain their reactions to the apparition. "I don't know what was happening to me," said one of the little girls. "I cannot speak, nor play, nor sing, and I haven't the strength to do anything." The angel appeared 1 more time in the fall of 1916 in the cave and gave them communion. This power that it showed was so intense that it absorbs and almost completely annihilates them. It practically deprives them of the use of their bodily senses. Their bodies are subject to a mysterious depressing force that prostrates them. So what's going on here? The impact of Fatima. Hundreds, many who attended the apparitions had reports of miracle healings that doctors could not explain. Now, in all fairness, I'm going to say something unpopular, but I think it's important to keep a balance in our minds about this stuff. So, scientists have studied the phenomena that occur around faith healing. They've gone to these big revivals where people are collapsing on the stage and throwing away their crutches and claiming they can see. And they've done studies, and they've been able to show that not all of these people are charlatans. Many of them have legitimate medical issues. And they do experience a respite from symptoms for a period of time. But usually the condition returns. And what they think is going on is the temporary change in neurochemicals brought on by the experience of the healing event. Now, I'm not saying, careful to say this, I'm not saying that true healing doesn't happen, because it does. And there are people who can, I have to be careful what I say, can help with that. But many of these big healing events are theater. And we need to be careful. We need to use discretion in what we believe, what we not fall for things. So at this final miracle, even people for several miles away who were not attending were driven out of their senses, you know, after the Virgin Mary appeared for the last time. Many people who attended them were deeply changed. Some were cured from a variety of diseases. One person went at the request of his mother. His mother was sick. And nothing happened, but when I got home, my mother, who had a large tumor in one of her eyes for many years, was cured. The doctors could not explain it. And then there's this story. And these are not my words. I just want to be careful for YouTube. I'm not advocating any of this or pushing any of this. This is just part of the story. A child of 12 named Albano Barros, for example, who was in a field near Minde, 8 miles from Fatima, was so struck when he saw the disk of light falling towards the earth that he does not remember what followed. Quote, I cannot even remember whether I took the sheep home, whether I ran, or what I did. In 1960, he had become a successful building contractor in New Jersey. Others were so affected that little farmer Manuel Francisco, they went home weeping. Another witness, a lady who now lives in the United States near Albany, added this comment, even today, whenever there's lightning, I remember it and I'm afraid. A prominent lawyer said in an interview in 1960, what I saw at Fatima could not help but affect the interior life. And I'm sure that all who saw the miracle or even heard about it cannot fail to be impressed by its greatness. I still remember it today as vividly as at the moment it happened, and I feel myself to be dominated by that extraordinary event. Others 16 miles away saw a flash in the sky. It was actually seen 30 miles away, and they were affected emotionally. Nobody got a photo of it. They tried, but the technology wasn't good enough. 2 men looked at what was going on. Now, all these references are to the final apparition at Fatima that we covered in video 4, at the end of video 4. 2 men looked with binoculars and saw 2 entities with ladders coming out of the disk in the sky. It was so bright, but it was too blinding to look at. The sky itself was dark as night. You could see the moon and stars, but this blinding light was in the sky. The sun zigzagged in the sky, and people thought it was the end of the world. The whole place turned into rainbow colors. sun is zigzagging around, and all of a sudden, all over people and everywhere, over the landscape, were rainbow colors. The secret prophecy. Vallee knew that one of the Pope's secretaries was present when John the 23rd opened the final secret Fatima prophecy in 1960. I didn't write the number down. Let's see. How could I do that? I must have been tired. $1960. 60. Let me write that 0 down. The cardinals left the room horrified by what they'd seen. He said they looked like a ghost. Why? What did they learn? Did they learn something that challenges their highest beliefs or their faith or their reason? UFOs, he believes, are a mixture of technology and something that transcends the physical and the religious. There's an inarguable similarity between UFOs and miracle experiences like Fatima. Are they a transcendent technology that can manipulate reality after or alter states of consciousness and emotion? What's the purpose here? To change our concept of the universe or reality or consciousness? He says we must cynically analyze UFOs and miracles. So this next section is called the physics of the Blessed Virgin Mary. He observes the experience distortion of their reality. The observers see their own reality distort. In the 16th century, Vallee said people saw a comet and dropped to their knees to confess their sins. And they did the same thing when they saw eclipses. Eclipses and comets were harbingers of signs. People behave in abject submission when presented with potential threat beyond their comprehension. The Marian apparition at Fatima, the Mary is golden light, and indistinguishable from the technology of gods and goddesses and UFOs. At Lourdes, this is the next Marian apparition he wanted to talk about, which happened in 1858, so a little previous. 14-year-old Bernadette was gathering wood when she heard a noise like a storm, but there were no trees moving, like the sound of a wind, right? She looked up and lost all speech and thought, is what she said. From a cave, a grotto, came a golden cloud. A beautiful lady appeared above a short bush, which moved as if it was windy, but there was no wind, just as what happened in Fatima. Later, the leaves all pointed permanently in the direction from which she left, as if they'd been crushed by an invisible weight. For Bernadette, she gazed at this lady and immediately all fear left her. She didn't know where she was. She felt physically paralyzed in place. She couldn't even raise her arms. The local priest got angry and said, tell the lady to make the rose bush bloom, kind of putting her down. 15 days of weird conversation that she had with this lady off and on. And there was a lot of nonsense. The lady would tell her, go over and eat grass or drink from the spring, but there was no spring. So there was a catalog of absurd tasks. And this repeats the history cross-culturally of people who experience these miracle apparitions. There's always strange tasks at hand. And it's the same as the narrative in the Apocrypha. It's not just the story of poor Bernadette, who became a visionary. There were weird features about it. Go drink at the spring. She was told there was no spring. Until after Bernadette dug and uncovered the next day at that spot, water came up, and that water healed people and has never stopped flowing since. Nobody knew there was a spring there. There was a request for penance. She was told, kiss the ground for the sins of others. And he asks, was this symbolic of the need in Europe for prayer and humility to fix the social problems? There's a belief that Fatima was a social political turning point that deeply influenced the collective psyche. There was something about this moment as it became, as people became aware of it, it made them think about different things in a different way. So his question is, will we experience UFOs contact with us? Is it the same purpose? Are they trying to influence our awareness of reality? A doctor held a flame to Bernadette's hand for 15 minutes while she was in a trance, and she did not burn. Then there were healing phenomena began when the water appeared, and it continues to today. Is this suggestive of the supreme faith of the people who experience it? Is it psychosomatic, as the researcher said, temporary? But this included diagnosed tumors and broken bones, lifelong conditions. This one guy had a leg that was crushed, and it needed to be amputated for 8 years. It was just really a mess. And it had the description, it had a horrible open wound. The bones were separated and broken, and it was just bad. Many medical witnesses documented the extent of the damage. This person was studied quite a lot. At the cave, his leg was suddenly healed. His wife fainted in shock. The wound was 100% gone. The bones were perfect. The leg functioned. On the return home, his little boy didn't believe that it was really his father because he'd never seen him with 2 normal legs. He died 23 years later from pneumonia, and his leg was still perfect. He's credited by telling his story he's credited with bringing many atheists back to the church. And my question is this a good thing? I mean, what is this? What's going on here? After his death, a skeptic paid for an autopsy. And the doctor said, well, yeah, this bone's been damaged. There was still a fragment of the bone missing. But the legs were of equal length, and obviously there was a mark of a break. But there was healthy new white bone connecting. This violated the known laws of natural healing. Then we have the case of Guadalupe. Vallee refers to notes of an Evans Wentz researcher of folklore of many cultures, and it included this strange tale. And I have to tell you, when I was a child, when we first moved to California from Ireland, we lived in a Mexican-American neighborhood. And the church that we went to was Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I stared every Sunday for the whole entire hour plus that we were stuck in the church. I stared at this larger than life, ceiling to floor, painted portrait of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I don't know, it's apropos of nothing. I'm just reminiscing. So the Virgin of Guadalupe is an event that happened in 1531 in Mexico. An entity appeared to an indigenous Nahuatl man, I hope I said that right, whose Spanish name was Juan Diego. His Nahuatl name was Singing Eagle. I like that better. According to this researcher, Evans Wentz, the apparition was not the Virgin Mary. It was the Aztec mother of gods, Tonantzin. He first heard a sweet singing of birds and then a voice from the hilltop, from a frosty mist and a bright cloud. he saw a beautiful Mexican girl about 14 years old standing in light. And there, from the story came a series of miracles. A basilica was built, a huge number of people converted, and in 6 years, they converted 8 million of the indigenous people. Juan Diego's uncle was healed. He had been dying. And another miracle was roses grew in the snow to convince the skeptical bishop. You know, Juan Diego went to the bishop the first time and said, I saw this, lady. And the bishop said, oh, yeah, I'm sure you did. Tell her to give you some roses. And it's a famous, well-known story, right? So he goes up and he tells the woman he wants me to have, stories. God, he wants me to have roses. I've been recording for hours. So she handed him this bunch of roses that just grew on a bush all of a sudden in the snow. Not normal. So he collected them and rolled them up in his cloak like she told him to. And he got to the bishop and he unrolled his cloak, and the cloak had like the painted image of this beautiful woman with roses standing above a crescent moon. And that's the painting that I would look at. It's very famous. Now we have the story of other shining beings. This guy, Evan Wentz, believed that the ancient gods were the same as the new gods with new names. And myths evolved from civilization to civilization. He drew parallels between ancient Indian beliefs and Mormonism. The theory is the white settlers were confronted and affected by a great psychic entity, which was the spirit of the land. In other parts of the world, there are devas, D-E-V-A, great shining beings that appeared. These also, great shining beings also appeared to Native Americans in rituals in high sacred places. There are stories of youths going solo into the mountains for 12 days of fasting, and the spirit comes and gives them knowledge. Some version of this story is repeated in global lore everywhere. Jesus went into the desert for 40 days. It's a vision quest, and sometimes it's limited to the priest class, sometimes usually limited to men, young men. Yeats, poet, told Evans Wentz that such sacred places were guarded by entities from the invisible other world. This is a Celtic story, that it did exist, including one in Wicklow, which is interesting because that's where my family is from. So do these entities, angels, the Blessed Virgin Mary, UFOs, do these all rejoice at our growing knowledge, or are they laughing at our stupidity and our allowing ourselves to be misled in superstition? We just don't know. The Mormon story, this is interesting. Joseph Smith in 1823 actually had earlier visions at the age of 14. In a huge light, an angel, the angel Moroni, I think, appeared and told him the location of golden plates that were buried. And he gave him 2 stories to use to translate, so the plates would help him translate these stories. So he later described the physical shock of the moment that it appeared, this angel, 3 times on the same night, on the autumn equinox. They spoke at length, and the passage of time surprised him. There was a distortion of time. He was exhausted, and later in the day fell unconscious. This angel reappeared and said, tell your father. And his father said, well, you do what God tells you to do. So he found these plates. He went and dug them up, and he had to come back. And after 4 years, he was allowed to take him. So the angel wouldn't let him walk off with them for 4 years. Later, the words on them proved to be ancient Egyptian, Assyrian, and other ancient languages. 11 different people saw the plates. and they got printed as the Book of Mormon in 1830. Like many revealed scriptures, they say that they're inspired by divine intelligence. One theory is that all of these things are broadcast from some cosmic educational program picked up by the gifted who can receive them, like in the sense of a radio. The differences are because of the imperfect reception of the people picking up the broadcasts. Vallee's not debating the truth or the lie of all these stories. He's not saying, I want you to believe this is true, or I don't want you to fall for it. He's not saying that. He's observing the effect that it had on millions of people. He says, that's the unusual fact. Look at how many people, logarithmically increased numbers of people that showed up at Fatima every time there was an apparition. One farm boy encountered an entity in a bright light, and he says this is worthy of being considered in the larger context of many similar accounts. It's not isolated. These stories repeat over and over. The earlier encounters of Smith at the age of 14 or 15, he met two entities in the woods and a pillar of light that descended. He saw these entities in them glowing, and one spoke to him. Evan Wentz likens Smith's experience to the takers out, is what they're called, the Teratons of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The Book of Mormon is, he says, the sacred history of ancient America. This is where it gets weird. That Native Americans are an Israelite tribe. In America, they came 600 years before the Christians came. You know, Columbus and those guys. He says, obviously, you can't agree with that as anthropological fact. It's an absurdity. As all such claims are absurdities. There's a mix of a certain kind of absurdity and fact. Certainty and fact and fiction, and absurdity. Was the purpose to isolate the believers from society because it made many of them pariahs? The Mormons claim that 3 recurring beings called Nephites came and performed miracles. This kind of, Vallee says, P.S., this is kind of like a counterpart to the 3 men in black of UFO lore. So he has what he calls a unified theory of the apparitions. So he's trying to make sense of all of these under one large umbrella of understanding. So many earlier modern UFO sightings were kind of visionaries. He said, they were like visions. They think angels and demons. People would see these things and they'd think the devil is visiting me or an angel is visiting me, and they wouldn't report it even. Vallee names several seers in modern history who claim such contact had set them on a road as visionaries or shamans. There's people whose names I didn't recognize, and it didn't advance the story. Vallee receives many letters, like I thought I saw a heavenly messenger. Now I know I saw a UFO. Almost enough to create a new religious movement. Isn't that interesting? He says it just needs the right combination of socio-psychological conditions, and you'd have a cult. It's as if he believes the revelations are intended to isolate seers. They become outcasts, and then they flee. And this happens to UFO experiencers. They're often ridiculed and tormented. And this is where I think maybe more so previously. Therefore, they're moved to create a sect or a movement. Moses, Joseph Smith, some of the cops who were at a UFO site went on to make this kind of fan base that they had. Vallee speculates that the stage is being set for some sort of new UFO faith. They inspire awe, They provide a sense of smallness of man. They show a possibility of contact with the cosmic. Most popular religions start this way, he says. There's a vision or the experience of one person, and the next thing you know, millions of people are following it. There are tables that he made trying to draw similarities here. I'll just quickly show you. He made tables of similarities between religious miracles on one side and UFO events on the other. Oh, and then, here's another whole 2 pages. And then here's another page. Pretty remarkable. It's interesting, but I won't torture you by reading it. Now we're on chapter 8. Who are you, Mr. Geller? I can't read my writing. Who are you, Mr. Geller? And there's a quote that I should read you. When spirits begin to speak with a man, he must beware that he believes nothing that they say. For nearly everything they say is fabricated by them, and they lie. For if they are permitted to narrate anything as what heaven is and how things in heaven are to be understood, they would tell so many lies that a man would be astonished. And this is from the Swedish mystic Emanuel Swedenborg from the 18th century. A personal appraisal of Uri Geller. Now, I remind you that Uri Geller was the hot topic in the 70s. He was bending spoons right, left, and center. He had a stage performance thing going on, but he also was a remote viewer and actually could teleport things and stuff. I mean, he was very interesting. So Vallee describes Geller picking up numbers in the minds of other people, and then they tested him with random number things, and he did very well. Vallee wonders if Geller can mentally influence people to pick up a number that he then reads. Geller claimed he had contact with UFOs. So what he's implying is that Geller is actually just picking it up, giving it to the person, and then regurgitating it back out. He came to the U.S. in 1970 with a researcher called Dr. Puharich. He had psychokinetic ability. He could move things and distort or dematerialize objects with his mind. At the time of this book, it had not been done under controls, laboratory controls. I think it might have been now. I'm not sure. Geller couldn't control this. It happened around him spontaneously. He'd been told that the UFOs control it. So they did telepathy experiments with him. Vallee feels that Geller is part real, part trick. He had 2 experiences with Geller. Geller confessed he was an ongoing contactee. This is now public, but at the time that Vallee talked to him, it wasn't made public. Vallee wonders if Geller was being used by something that wants to appear as a higher entity. He's very skeptical. Geller said that they initiated all the contact. This was not his idea. He didn't invite them to bother him. Vallee attempted rudimentary remote viewing with Geller, sending an image to Geller, and he felt it was genuine. He did a second experiment he wrote a number that Vallee wrote. He wrote a number, Vallee did, Geller wrote a number, and it was exactly the same. And what was so interesting is that Geller picked up on the European print. They write numbers and letters just slightly different. And Geller picked up on that. He was able to guess the color that Vallee was thinking of. He showed Vallee his spoon bending ability, and Vallee says it was real. Geller, as many mediums, warns that his power is not in him, but from a higher spiritual center, or ETs. Would such an entity exist, or would such an entity have interest in interfering with us? Why through Geller, who is quite openly enjoying the notoriety and the money and the fame? Is this the same phenomenon as UFOs? If we could explain Geller, could we also explain UFOs? Yuri encourages people to regard him as an intentional emissary from a higher agency. Vallee warns, don't be too skeptical and don't be too credulous. Building a bridge. Sorry, my husband's feeding the dogs. You think they never got fed. The way they act, it's really pathetic. So Vallee at first was reluctant to build bridges between UFOs and psychic phenomenon, although he was aware that they often came together. It was hard to ignore a repeated history of connections in personal narratives that he heard. In time, he said, the book was written. Many of his scientific peers were more willing to look at UFOs, but they weren't as willing to look at psychic phenomena. They felt psi phenomena were disreputable. Vallee believes that it's not two sets of phenomena, but a single universe of events. So we must ask, who are we, and why now are these events escalating and getting attention? We have fought for rational scientific thinking, and now this is being challenged. He describes a number of personal experiences of readers. One connects rational and absurd stuff from Castaneda's books with similar incongruous events of UFOs and psi. It's all about a manipulation of space-time. Many indicate that these experiences are not uncommon for them. Vallee believes it's a control system, and this is where I think his theory is so interesting. Chapter 9, the control system. Let's see, how are we doing for time? How am I doing for pages here? Okay, perfect. Chapter 9, the conditioning of Homo sapiens. We aren't close to understanding the technology, at least in the 70s, but we may be close to knowing what UFOs are in their nature and purpose. There's a willingness to entertain the idea of cosmic energy and other civilizations and a potential benefit from UFOs. For example, Jean Dixon, the psychic, she believed that they were ETs, but they were here for good. Vallee says he thinks they're a control system. There's a purpose to this. Like a house thermostat. It's not good, it's not bad. It's serving a larger purpose. He sees it as a control of human consciousness. Is it a natural, spontaneous, genetic, social, psychological, artificial, under the power of a superhuman will? Is it controlled by the laws that we don't understand? His answer is he doesn't know. However, he studies these phenomena and he sees equal parts rational and absurd. Some friendly, some hostile. He says he can never explain more than half, and he believes that he's working on the wrong level. And all believers and skeptics are working on the wrong level. He says we're all using the wrong approach. He provides a pattern of UFO activity as observed, and he asks, is this a schedule of reinforcement? This is so interesting to me. Is it intended to get us to learn a new behavior, to make the learning irreversible? We know how to do that with the work of B.F. Skinner. With every wave of UFOs, the social impact becomes greater. And there are many more young who are interested, and there's increased cultural coverage. Are UFO sightings that happen in groups called flaps, are they scheduled reinforcement? So what does he mean by that? He says that Skinner showed that behavior can be modified by selectively reinforcing certain actions. And it's most effective as a learning tool with periodicity, off and on, in an unpredictable pattern. So This is slow progress that they're making, but it's the highest level of adaptation, and it will be irreversible. So are they trying to teach us something? Yes, it's taking forever, but every time UFOs become a thing, either manifesting as gods and goddesses, or manifesting as the Virgin Mary, or manifesting as little green men in a saucer, are they intentionally trying to teach us something about ourselves? And they come in unpredictable groups, and they come in irregular times, time differences. He says they don't seem to do anything. I mean, what are they doing? They're not doing anything. The best schedule of reinforcement is one that combines periodicity with unpredictability. It's interesting to ask whether the pattern of UFO waves does not have the same effect as a schedule of reinforcement. If UFOs are having an action at that level, it'll be almost impossible to detect it by conventional means. However, he says they operate on the level of imagination and myth, which obey strict laws, and they're governed by a control system. This UFO process of learning takes time, but will never be forgotten. We must measure their effect on our worldview. We're not looking at the right thing. We're hungry for knowledge and power, and UFOs present themselves as technological objects because we can't ignore when they defy physics as we know it. It attracts our attention. We'll be compelled to study them. We won't learn their true nature, but our study will rearrange our concept of consciousness. This is like a thermostat controlling the variables of human belief. The phenomenon, it regulates our development. This is mind-boggling information here. I love this, that he's onto this. If this is true, it explains the absurdities and the contradictions, because it's not about logic, it's about consciousness. He says, when I speak of a control system for planet Earth, I don't want my words to be misunderstood. I don't mean that some higher order of beings has locked us inside the constraints of a space-bound jail closely monitored by psychic entities we call angels or demons. I do not propose to redefine God. What I do mean is that mythology rules at a level of our social reality over which normal political and intellectual action has no real power. At that level, time frames are long, of the order of a century, and evolution is slow and sure. Mass media, which are designed to give split-second images of transient noise, the noisier the better, they miss this signal entirely. A society with an attention span of 10 minutes, which is the interval between TV commercials, can have no concept of events that have begun when my grandfather was not yet born and will end after my grandson dies. But there are such long-term changes, and they may be deliberate. They dominate the destiny of civilizations. Myths define the set of things scholars, politicians, and scientists can think about. They're operated upon by symbols, and the language these symbols form constitutes a complete system. This system is metalogical, not metaphysical. It violates no laws because it is the substance of which laws are made. UFOs are both physical and psychic. And they have a deep emotional reaction for us. They evoke a deep emotional reaction, but they prevent investigation, and rational study is impossible. Is this the next form of religion, he asks. And I wrote here, this was all new consideration in the 70s, and it's kind of old hat now. He says he's heard many stories of human ET contact with visitors residing on Earth. People have disappeared, abductions, have been abducted and returned, and aliens are among us. Now, these, like I said, are old hat now. His fascination goes beyond the reality or not of the stories. He focuses on the subculture growing globally, that humanity has a higher destiny. People's lives are dramatically changed by these experiences. It's not what happens in the experience, it's how it changes people afterwards. Are these the forerunners of a new spiritual movement? Not escapism, a new religion, a newer level of understanding of our reality, a change in human attitude towards paranormal, psychic, psi, and ET life. He notes that scientists are more and more willing to study all of this. And today there certainly are. And today, in fact, experimental physicists, theoretical physicists are all about this. And they go back to Carl Jung and Max Planck, Einstein, people who actually believed that this was the reality. He says salvation from heaven, it may be, but by whom and by what? What will we find? So now we have our conclusion. As in our past, a new truth arises. Today, people expect visitors from outer space. A myth is not an untruth. A myth is that which is truer than truth. UFOs from space may not be true, but if enough people believe, certain things can change irreversibly. He reveals rumors of government study and increasing government interest, maybe revealing that ETs are, he says maybe they'll be revealing the reality of ETs at the bicentennial. Well, that's wishful thinking. But he says there's increased social awareness and acceptance, and many are now participating in the myth making. He said these repeated waves are a reinforcement of the belief. And each time they happen, skepticism erodes a little more. The sightings are seen as evidence, but science likes proof and doesn't have proof. Are there, the UFOs, laws of physics different from ours? An observable change will increase our willingness to believe in ET life. We can recognize it for what it is, the result of a shifting of our mythological structure, the human learning curve bending towards a new cosmic behavior. When this irreversible learning is achieved, the UFO phenomenon may go away entirely, or it may assume some suitable representation on a human scale. The angels may land downtown. He now believes that not in real study. He says there's a lot of behind closed door hand-wringing and gossip and speculation and an incoherent restlessness, but they're still not identified. They're still unidentified. But research on interest in the paranormal has increased dramatically. And it says the opportunity to expand our knowledge and redefine ourselves is encouraged by this UFO stuff. And that's where we need to focus. We need to focus within ourselves. That's the end of the book. I really love this idea. I love the challenge to the conventional notion that entities are coming from elsewhere. And that actually may be true. And here's the thing, the concept of visitors from another planet may agree with the notion of spiritually evolved entities that are living elsewhere in a higher vibratory place, and very much might be to encourage us to explore our consciousness and the paranormal, because that's all about raising vibrations and maybe meeting them where they are, rather than worrying about the propulsion of propulsion of the saucers themselves. I just got distracted. You see that? I think we're on to something here. And that's the end of the book. And I'm just so grateful to Jacques Vallee. I think he's a great man and a great thinker. Great thinkers always put out the uncomfortable questions that are close to getting to us to the truth. So it may be an old book, but it's a goodie. The Invisible College by Jacques Vallee. I also recommend The American Cosmic by Dr. D.W. Pasulka. And she's been interviewed a lot on podcasts, and she's a very interesting person. I'd love to get a hold of her. I've tried and tried and tried, and I haven't had any luck. But, you know, a lot of people that are known for their beliefs and the books they've written, and they become well-known, I think they have to kind of protect themselves. I think they get bombarded by the public, and it's too much for ordinary people. So, you know, respect to her, respect to Jacques Vallee. And once again, in memory of Erich von Däniken. Very sad. So, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have questions, let me know. And I'm thinking about cards or something about this topic. We'll see. Maybe a little something about Erich von Däniken. We'll see. I've got to formulate a plan. In the meantime, thank you so much. And do come back. I have another great book up my sleeve. Slanke Foil. Slanche.